family-owned shop in Loganville, Soesby's Garage for all your automotive repair needs. We service all makes and models, foreign and domestic. We repair engines, alternators, brakes, alignments, AC systems, and more, using certified technicians with over 90 years of combined experience. We also offer same-day service for some repairs. Soesby's Garage, 200 Bay Creek Road in Loganville. Dependable, honest, and fair. Look us up on Google or Facebook. We'll take good care of you.
Broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio inside the Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel. It's time for Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services. We are the cornerstone of security in the Southeast.
Hey everybody, welcome to Case in Point once again, presented by Paradigm Security Services and sponsored by Soesby's Garage at 200 Bay Creek Road in Loganville, Georgia. Give John a call. They service all makes and models, foreign and domestic. Well, I'm your host, Rick Strawn, the president of Paradigm Security Services, and we're excited to be with you today on Business RadioX. We're coming to you from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio, located in the beautiful Sonesta Gwinnett Place Atlanta Hotel in Duluth, Georgia. Each week, as everybody knows, we plan on featuring businesses in the Atlanta area, especially those that serve Gwinnett County. While all businesses have security concerns, not all are about physical security, and we will touch on that and all aspects related to security through the course of each show. Our guest today, I am so happy to be able to have on here Miss Lisa Zaken, and I know she's familiar to a lot of you listeners. She is the Executive Director of Leadership Gwinnett. That's an awesome responsibility, and it's a great organization. I am a graduate of the best class ever of 2014, and let's just start out with just asking Lisa, who are you? Who's Lisa Zaken? Where'd you come from? How'd you get here? How did you get into doing what you're doing? Because it's such a unique type of job. I know they say if you find a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life, but I know you love this job and you never stop working. So tell us about Lisa.
Thank you so much, Rick. I'm delighted to be part of the program today. Who's Lisa Zaken? So I came to Georgia in September of 1980. I grew up in western Pennsylvania, went to college, met my husband, which we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. And we packed everything we owned in the back of a 72 Grand Prix and moved to Jimmy Carter Boulevard in a townhome, which I thought was really kind of special because it was 2 floors. It wasn't an apartment. It was a townhome. So we made our nest there. We moved up 85 a little bit. We have spent the last 35 years in the Lawrenceville area, raised our children, have grandkids now in the public school system, and have just been part of this community for 40 years. And I started my career in Tech Park in 1980, as soon as I moved here, for Institute of Industrial Engineers. And so it's a nonprofit engineering association for IEs, and I spent 22 years there and loved it. I should have majored in industrial engineering. It's a wonderful profession. However, I left out of there thinking there's got to be something a little bit more for me, so I started with the Gwinnett Chamber in 2002 as their vice president of membership. Got to really know the business community and was actually embarrassed that I didn't understand really what chambers did, because the organization I worked for was a nonprofit that dealt internationally. Mm-hmm. And so our clients were, and our members were all over the world, but our vendors were in New York and Washington and not in our backyard, when it was all here for us all the time. So became a true lover of the Gwinnett Chamber, what they stood for, what they did. Part of that program was Leadership Gwinnett, back when the Chamber owned Leadership Gwinnett. And I went through in 2005, and from then on it just was a downhill slide or maybe an uphill slide. But I just live and breathe it, love it, understand it so much, and know why it's so good for our community. And when the position came open, at that point it was a chamber position. Right. I took it, and then in 2013 we became our own 501c3 nonprofit, Leadership Gwinnett Foundation, and I became their first executive director. So,
well, I will say this: you've done a fantastic job there.
Thank you.
It's an awesome responsibility, but you know, when they talk about community leadership, a lot of people say, "Well, I don't need to go to leadership Gwinnett. I've been a leader for 30 years. All this every reason in the world of why they don't need a leadership, what they think is a course. What would be community leadership programs? Why do they matter?
Well, and that's a very important distinction. And I think a lot of people really don't realize what Leadership Gwinnett is. In my mind, there's really two kinds of leadership. There's the leadership of your traditional leadership. You manage a team within your organization. And then there's social leadership, which is the kind of leadership that collectively makes a community stronger. By virtue of a community leader, so that's a person or a group of people who recognize specific issues in the community, and not only want to resolve them, but seek to learn everything about it. I would say it's essentially a holistic view of community issues with a trained eye, and we train through a 9-month program and through a short program these leaders that are leaders in their own right, in their own profession. We bring them collectively into the scene of Gwinnett to talk about sort of the good, bad, and the ugly of what's going on in our community, how they can plug in and make it and keep it the great place that it is.
Well, I know, having gone through it, one of the things that's fascinating as you go through is when you think Gwinnett, you think basically what the county does, what it's all about. You go through and then they pick it apart piece by piece, department by department. Well, maybe that's not a way to put it, but
kind of sector by sector.
Sector by sector. Mm-hmm. And you go through and you learn, you dive deep into it, and you learn really what's behind the scenes. And, that gives you so much more that you can relate to and you can communicate with other people on, because, it's just stuff that you have no way of knowing unless you've been on the other side of the curtain. Exactly. And that's what leadership does, is it takes you on the other side of that curtain, and you get to, like I say, dive deep into this stuff. Well, you talk about Leadership Gwinnett, what is the foundation of the program? How did it actually develop?
So back in the early 80s, Leadership Atlanta was active, and a lot of the leaders in Gwinnett participated in Leadership Atlanta, but realized when Gwinnett was growing like crazy through the 80s, it went from sort of a rural agricultural community to a more densely urban populated area. And these folks said it's time for our own program. So collectively, many leaders within the chamber developed the curriculum, put facilitators in place, put the process in place for selecting a class. And that first class was named, there was about 32 people in 1986. And interestingly enough, Commissioner Chair Charlotte Nash and our Gwinnett Public Schools Superintendent Alvin Wilbanks were both in that first class. So that really set the bar very high.
Absolutely.
And those two are so obviously very engaged in our community and in the decision making, but they still applaud Leadership Gwinnett and still support our organization every day.
Well, and there's so many things that leadership, through Leadership Gwinnett, like with Alvin Wilbanks, you have that principle of the day.
Yeah.
And I have loved doing that the last 6 years, or I think it's 6, however many since 2014. But I love it because it brings the community in the school system, the public school system, and the community, the business leaders together, so that you fully understand there again the other side of that curtain. Mm-hmm. And he has been fantastic in the cooperation that he's had with the chamber and Leadership Gwinnett in doing this.
Yes.
Programs leadership offers for civic. What kind of programs does leadership offer for civic leadership?
So our core program, you'll hear me reference it as our signature program, is the one that we started back in the 80s. And it's a 9-month program. Folks apply for it. Your application is graded. A lot of people think, I'm already a big leader in the community, I'm going to get in. Well, it's not necessarily the case, because each of the questions that are on the application are graded, and then there's a selection committee that actually meets to select that next best class ever. And the class itself is divided into different categories. So there's only so many from education, only so many from nonprofits, only so many from business and government. And that's very intentionally designed to have just a very rich conversation and diversity of thought with the group. You don't want a whole room of lawyers. You don't want a whole group of business people. You want that rich, diverse thinking from all walks of the community. And so that 9-month program will focus one day a month on a learning day, and you're going to have a day one whole complete day that's specifically related to economic development.
Total immersion, I might add.
Yep. Or health and human services, or regional relations, or infrastructure. What's the infrastructure look in your community? Or education. What's the education landscape? We will handpick 7 specific learning areas that we dive deep into, and you will meet and hear from up to 30 speakers in a day. This 9-month program also puts you in a small group that we call study groups. It gives you time beyond the classroom to learn about these issues, talk about these issues, and further enrich your experiences in what the community needs or what the community is looking for. And then there's all the field trips, like you mentioned, Principal for a Day. Amazing program. Every class member will sit alongside a principal for a whole day, and unless you do that, you have no idea what our principals go through.
Absolutely.
They're more social workers than they are principals, and the demands on them and the learning that they provide for their teachers and their students is unbelievable. And every year I do it, I'm so energized and jazzed up by our county public school system. We also do the same thing with a ride-along. We have a whole day dedicated to justice in Gwinnett, the court system, the jail system, issues.
I felt like I was back 20 years ago when back in the seat of a patrol car.
Right. But you get to sit alongside an officer for 4 or 8 hours and, again, learn what they what they're up against. And all of that is imparted for conversation on our Health and Community Service Day. It is honestly the only program that's out there that will collectively take leaders that are already in leaders, like you say, in their own right, and just expose them to all of the infrastructure that makes our community so great.
Well, and the individual workshops that you say put together, it's amazing the diversity within that small group. It's just every side of the coin, from conservative, liberal, rich, poor. I mean, it's just everybody's there. Yep.
And all collectively there for the same reason. All collectively caring about their community. And a great leadership fabric in a community doesn't just happen by accident. I mean, it's very intentional.
Oh, absolutely. And, one of the things that I've noticed y'all come up with the last couple of years, a few years, and time flies, so I'm not sure how long it's been, is Glance. And I sent Renee Roos, who's now our HR director, through Glance, and, of course, she loved it. I knew she would. But between Leadership Gwinnett, Glance, who should participate in what, and how do you decide which one you really think is best for you?
Well, Leadership Gwinnett is definitely a commitment. There's a tuition of $3,250. There are scholarships that are available. We never fully fund a scholarship. We believe everybody has to have a little skin in the game.
Have it.
And it's, it is a 9-month process. It'll start in August and it ends in May. And people are intimidated by that. When you really break it down, it's very manageable. And it's very worth it. But there's a lot of people that can't afford a $3,000 price tag, and they also can't afford that time away. They're not at the level in their organization where they can make those decisions, etc. So we would get 400 or so nominations a year for people that would be interested in applying to the class. And I'd say about a quarter of that actually filled out applications. Okay, so it's those 100 or so applications a year that we're drawing 40 people out of. And it always bothered us. We were losing so many people's desire to learn more and be part of it, because unless you applied for the class, there was really nothing else. So in 2013, when we became our own entity, we ran a capital campaign literally and raised some funds from our community. 91 investors in our community made a long-term pledge to get us to hire our next person, our second person, for the first time in 35 years. Now there's 2 people, and we actually have a third because we're continuing to grow. But with this shift came some real change in the organization, and we said, we got to expand our footprint. This community is going to be 1 million people. I think these 42 people that we train each year are awesome, and they get it, but there's so much more. So we opened a community program called Glance Gwinnett. No nomination required. First come, first serve. It's a $600 price point. It's 2.5 days. And it is really a quick immersion into what the concept of this community leadership is all about. And we're going into our 6th year, and we have about 650 graduates of that, in addition to our 1,200 alums of the long program. And, for some, it's a feeder program into Leadership Gwinnett because they're like, wow, I had no idea what this was, and now I do, and I want more. Or for some, it's all they needed. They learned, they connected, and then they even had a way to connect their passion with purpose. And now they're part of our fabric.
Well, I know Renee speaks extremely highly of it, and I read a lot about what's going on in Glance. Now, is there still a senior leadership program?
There is, and that's volunteer-led. They don't have paid staff, and that program's been going on for quite some time as well. And I think it's a 55 and up program, and so they align their curriculum with a lot of what we do. It's not quite as intense. It's not quite the time commitment for that. So, yeah.
Well, I am one that was honored, truly honored to now. And for those that apply, don't get discouraged.
Right.
It was the 3rd time that I put an application in that I was actually brought into the program. And I laugh and I attest to the fact that I reached out to everybody. One of the people said, I've never seen so many people with this many recommendations come. One of them said, well, Mr. Recommendation. But it's how bad I wanted it. I reached out to everybody I could think of. Said, please ask them. And I was truly honored to do that.
Well, it's a good point that you make. And persistence does pay off. And it happens more times than you think because
you've got X number of places and only X number of people.
Right. And, probably the biggest challenge I have is having to tell that person that they didn't make the class this year, and they're just shocked. Like, what do you mean I didn't make the class?
I can't believe that I didn't make it.
Right. But when I sit down with people and I tell them the process, it's very transparent. It's very simple, but it's all intentional in making sure that class is the
best class ever.
Well, and the most diverse, and the most diverse in thought. Right, because if it's the same people saying the same thing all the time, no one learns.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's why you don't put all attorneys or all nurses or all cops. Right. Or, we all know what we're talking about.
Right.
You don't learn anything.
Right.
You've got to hear from other people and build those relationships because in business as well as just in personal life, it's all about relationships.
It is.
And that's one of probably the best thing that I saw in Gwinnett. I was on a podcast not long ago. We talked about it, where I was asked what was the best thing that you really got out of Leadership Gwinnett, and I said that is something that is so hard to tag down because there's so many awesome things that you get out of it. But I think the building of relationships and being part of the alumni, and if you've got a business question that you're struggling with, you can reach out to the alumni, and anybody that's been through Gwinnett Leadership Gwinnett will be willing to sit down and talk to you if they have an answer. In fact, they'll talk to you if they don't have an answer.
Exactly.
Ask Kramer Sales.
Exactly. And I like that you pointed out sort of your personal benefits and your personal journey. I hear all the time from alums the connections that I made, the friends that I made along the way, and the doors that it opened for me. Just they had no idea of really what that would mean to them. I think as a business, so if you have an employee and they think, hey, I want to do Leadership Gwinnett, if the CEO doesn't have any idea what we do, well, what is that? We already have leadership training.
Yep.
I think it's important for business owners and business directors who are here in Gwinnett and want to be part of the fabric of Gwinnett. It really behooves them to nominate people with their senior leadership in their company to be part of it, because once they're done, the connections that they've made and sort of their own fabric that they have woven will help that company in many ways. Like, community projects. You hear companies all the time, hey, we want to get together a group of people. We want to do a project for Gwinnett. Where do I go? Well, your person.
Somebody's got something going on.
Right. Your person knows and has connections all across the board in whatever their passion as a group would be, we can connect them. Speakers, if you're, say, Mitsubishi, this large organization, if security was a concern, if people within their organization felt like, you know what, we just want to get behind this horrible sex trafficking issue that we have in Gwinnett, guess what? Your person's now connected to the people that do that and bring them in as speakers. And I just think of all the connections that these people have now, just unrelated to their business at hand.
And those relationships last a lifetime.
Yeah.
I would strongly suggest that these businesses start with your higher ups. Put your application in, do everything you can, persist, get into Leadership Gwinnett, and then don't just let it in there. Stay involved, but also get someone under you to go through Leadership Gwinnett. Carry on that flame.
And glance, too. I mean, that's the short. You're not away a long time. You make those connections. And, probably the most disheartening thing that I run up on, not a lot, but sometimes, is some companies, even here in Gwinnett, really don't care about the community around them.
Absolutely.
And so that's,
it's a shame.
That's not good for your employee base. That's not good for your betterment of the community. It's not good for, we all use the same school system practically. We all call the same 911. We all have the same fire, that puts out fires, God forbid. But, it's a community. It's a collection of people that should share in that. So,
and all of these people that are involved in those professions are involved in something else.
Right.
And it's a matter of getting all this together, collating it, and figuring out what is it you really want to do to help, and you can get direction on it.
It should be in your backyard.
Absolutely. Well, how do graduates of Leadership Gwinnett impact the community when you really look at it? What we already kind of know what I've said about it, but what do others say about it?
Well, we really put this to the test last summer. We did a survey with our alumni through Deloitte, and I was part of a project with Deloitte, and we surveyed on our alumni. We can specifically say, with very bold statements, that 90% of those people that were interviewed reported that they felt more connected to Gwinnett's leaders and decision makers. So that's huge. And 100% of them felt like they were more knowledgeable about Gwinnett and about the unique issues in our community. It's funny because on our website, which is leadershipgwinnett.com, there's some testimonials on there. And I was looking the other day, we were refreshing some of our testimonials, and Mayor Nancy Harris, mayor of Duluth, literally say, and she will tell me today, going through that program gave her the confidence to run for public office. So that's pretty big. Like, that had an enormous impact on her. She absolutely has. And another leader said that it was transformative for her in many ways, and the connections that she made and the colleagues, literally opened more doors for her than she ever imagined. And she's an attorney with a very large organization in Gwinnett, very focused, travels internationally, but just cherishes the relationships that she made in her local community.
A lot of those doors you don't even know exist.
Right.
You don't know what door to knock on or, where to find it.
Exactly.
And that's part of what you find in the Leadership Gwinnett program is you're able to identify the doors. And that's a biggie. Well, over this past year, what are some of the organizational highlights that Leadership Gwinnett has had?
Well, over the last 5 years, just the success and the growth of being on our own. So the Leadership Gwinnett Foundation is essentially my board of directors that will channel the energy with respect to budgeting and strategic alliances and strategic planning. But the three of us on staff, Brooke Waters, who's our program manager and runs Glance Gwinnett and the alumni program and many other things, and Logan Serrano is our new marketing and communications coordinator, which as you grow as an organization, you cannot lose a beat on promotions and getting folks in the new class, but promoting Glance to the community. We do it 3 times a year, and we have 35 or so participants in each. So you can't skip a beat on your social media or your direct mail marketing or your phone calling to make sure that there's people in the room and taking advantage of that program. So the three of us have grown just as a team in a way that I'm just so proud of. But I also know that we can't do it without our 200 to 250 volunteers a year that actually help us run the programs, run the learning days, help us with alumni events, serve on our board, serve on our steering committee. I'm part of an organization called Association of Leadership Programs, and it's across the United States. We meet once a year together. It's executive directors of all organizations, leadership-based, just like us. And it's phenomenal to get feedback from them. But they all look to me on how do you get so many people to be involved. They just can't believe that I have 250 people a year that have a leadership role, and that'll change next year, and then they have new, They just can't believe it. So,
well, and I know it's modesty, but part of one of those highlights over this year is I believe that you've been awarded the Public Service Award for Gwinnett County this year.
I have, for the Gwinnett Chamber Annual Dinner that's this Friday. So I'm one of a group of some fabulous folks that are going to be awarded a Public Service Award.
Absolutely.
And at first I'm like, I didn't do all that. And then I realized, well, yeah, I kind of did.
Yeah, you got to take credit for some of it.
I take great pride in that, and I really attribute it to the thousands of alums and graduates that are doing the good things in the community. But, our team is definitely the group that is the glue. In fact, really interestingly enough, one of our chairmen, T. Mike Tennant, who has been with the organization since the very beginning, actually donated a gift to Leadership Gwinnett where he trademarked the term glue.
Yep.
So that's Leadership Gwinnett. We're the glue that holds the community together.
No, absolutely.
So thank you, T. Mike, for that. We're the glue.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that is such an award that, it's not a lot of people get it and are recognized like that. And like you said, it's all about the team. It's all about a lot of people's effort to help you get there. But the bottom line is you're the light that shone and got the award as a representative of all those people.
Yeah.
You can't give everybody one, so you have to pick a person.
And I'm delighted to accept it on their behalf.
And you're the leadership in Gwinnett.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Why does it matter to understand the issues and addresses at the needs of your community? Why does it really matter if you're focused and I've got my business and I'm running my business and I'm focused on making my clients happy? Why does it really matter what's going on as far as, the rest of the community?
Well, knowledge is power, and businesses really can reap rewards from those that have been through the program. So, you are constantly learning. Not only do you learn the year that you're in the class or the 2.5 days you're in the class, it's constant. You're part of the family. You're part of the Leadership Gwinnett family. And I think that I hear graduates saying, and I keep going back to their personal experiences that affect a business, but I keep going back to them saying, that program really knocked them out of their comfort zone. It gave them connections they'd never make on their own. It made them appreciate diverse perspectives instead of their own myopic view of issues. If you read the newspaper and you follow social media, that's not enough. You really have to dive into the issues and have your own opinions and make your own assumptions.
Well, and you also get away from the fake stuff.
Exactly.
You're involved in it, and you're on the real side of it. You're not on the fake side of it.
Exactly. And so it really helped them find their purpose and passion. Yes, I have a professional job in Gwinnett County. I matter, but what do you truly want to do to make a difference? What do you want your legacy to be? How do you want people to remember you? And if you're in your own little myopic world, you might not find that.
Absolutely.
And we spread it out, the opportunities for you to find yourself in that.
Absolutely, you do. Well, and you mentioned people talking about their stories and all that and the reason, but can you give me some success stories that with y'all's organization?
Yeah, and so we have little mini success stories every month with Glance. These folks will come out, and my favorite thing to do is stand at the end of the day on a Glance on the end of it's really 2.5 days. It's all day Wednesday, all day Thursday, half a day Friday. So at noon on Friday when they're walking out the door, people are just shaking their heads saying, I had no idea what this was. My boss made me come. I didn't know what this was. This is phenomenal. This is amazing. How can I do more? And that just feeds our soul when we know we're doing the right thing in our community. But one thing I remember specifically was about 2 Glances ago, Bruce Hardy, who's the pastor and CFO of Cross Point Church, went through Glance. And he visited a school. We put you in schools, even in the short program. You're getting on a bus and going to a school, and You're seeing what's going on in that particular school system. And he listened to a student who really wanted to be involved in a particular program within the school and really had aspirations to get to college, and this had related to college, but she didn't have a car. And that was, he was just so struck by her story because we paired them up for lunch with students. Well, he went back to his church, and he knew that a family had donated a car to the church. So he went to his leadership, and he answered the call, and he reached out to the girl's mom and said, hey, we have a car for her.
That is awesome.
So it's just that there's so many stories like that just at a glance, just at a quick glance.
I like that, at a glance.
Right. So just that union of community and people of needs, and we got it for you. And I think with Leadership Gwinnett, you might have some bigger programmatic things that come out of it. One thing was I look back to the GRIP program, which is related to the justice system, and it's called Gwinnett Reentry Intervention Program. So when you really go through Justice Day and you learn about the challenges of our justice system, the folks that are incarcerated come out, they're right back in again, a high percentage of them. And there was 2 alumni that were sitting in the same program, Demetrius Jordan from United Way at the time, and Pat McDonough, who's an attorney with Anderson Tate Carr. And they looked at each other and said, you know what, there's got to be something we can do about this. So those 2 put their heads together with the sheriff and with law enforcement and put together a program called GRIP.
And it's a heck of a program.
Their rate of recidivism has dropped dramatically. So that's just another example. And there's hundreds of them, many great stories that we could tell.
Well, it gives a lot of people a completely different perspective because one of the things you do is you go inside the jail.
Right.
And me, I've been in a few jails as a cop in my past, but it's a different perspective.
Right.
And to watch the faces of the people that have never been inside a jail and see their reactions is that's priceless.
Right.
You couldn't buy that with a MasterCard.
Right.
But I could talk all day to you and love this conversation because I love the organization. I think it is one of, if not the best organization for community business relationships within any county, much less just within Gwinnett County. I know it is Gwinnett. But I think it's something that I would highly recommend that more people look into it, more people apply and apply and apply and apply until you go. Don't get discouraged. And Glance as well, because I know I've sent someone through Glance. She loved it. It definitely helped her in a lot of ways. And, if somebody wants to do this, how do they get in touch with you or with the organization, or how do they get in touch with Brooke, or what do you do?
I would say two things right off the bat. LeadershipGwinnett.com is our website, and it's full of information. All of our contact information is readily available there. Another thing is if you're on Facebook, request to be on our fan page, because in our fan page, we're not giving any of the private confidential information that we talk about during the class on that page, but we certainly give the community enough
Give structure.
Yeah, to get excited about it. So just request to be part of that fan page. But yeah, our website really is the place to start.
Well, it sounds great. I can't recommend, again, strongly enough for people to check this out, get involved, stay involved, get engaged, as you say, and stay engaged. Well, thank you all for joining us on Case in Point, presented by Paradigm Security Services. Remember, you can join us live every Wednesday at 11:30 in the morning, or you can listen to our show anytime you want by going to businessradiox.com, clicking on Gwinnett Studio, and then click on Case in Point. And just another shout out for Social Garage, our sponsor. Go see John. He's at 200 Bay Creek Road in Loganville, 678-825-2127. It's well worth the drive. They're family-owned, local automotive shop in Loganville, and they're absolutely the most honest people I have ever found when it comes to this, and I have come across a lot of them. Join us next week at 11:30 when we will talk with business leaders about their businesses and related security issues in today's world. Thanks again to my guest, Lisa Zaken with Leadership Gwinnett, and for producer Mike. And again, I am Rick Strawn, and remember, at Paradigm Security Services, we cover more than just your assets.